Hey, good evening everyone. This is kiodiekin. Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video review, we're going to do a continuation of our misleading single board computer reviews, what you should know before you buy. Now, before you click away, the reason why this is very important is because I know a lot of you are simple end users. You don't spend a lot of time tinkering with single board computers, and we're going to take a look at one of the responses that was left from a subscriber of mine. As you can see here, it is quite lengthy and it is very long here. And the purpose of this is that this individual gives some additional insight as to some of the complaints that I've addressed here on the channel in regards to certain single board computers, as well as some of the other things that devs know. Again, this is quite lengthy, and for those of you who may not fully understand all the vernacular and all the technical specifications, you need to listen to this video and listen to the additional comments from another community member, because if you have a home arcade unit using a Raspberry Pi, Raspberry Pi 4, a Orange Pi, Banana Pi, as you all know, Arcade 1-Up, atgames, Arcade, any of the predominant home arcade manufacturers out there, they are using single board computers to emulate. And some of them are releasing product that isn't exactly up to par. When you buy it, they promise, hey, we'll have a fix for you in the next couple of months or in a few weeks. No, that's not the case. And then of course you also have companies promising performance and simply from a pre-order. And again, a lot of these single board computers are providing hardware support, and it has a lack of software optimization. And again, that optimization primarily again comes from the community, and you won't know exactly what that single board computer can do for another 6 months, year and a half, and in some cases even 2 years. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Hope you guys find this video informative, and please listen to it in its entirety if you want to get more information and a better sound understanding of how your single board computer works in conjunction with you having a home arcade. All right, so we have here, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but SRVUK left a comment 13 days ago. Again, this is quite lengthy. And again, please remember the importance of this affects most of you who are buying home arcade units that have some type of single board computer in there. And then of course you have companies, entities, people telling you, hey, this is the latest and greatest, and they haven't ran anything on it. You have no idea who's going to support it. You have no idea who's going to be behind it, and you can't make a snap judge decision simply based on hardware alone without knowing if there's even going to be driver support or how long they're going to support that single board computer. So this gentleman replied in regards to my single board computer video. Whilst I can certainly agree with some of the critique of the Orange Pi 5, which also realistically in general applies to all the other Arcade 3588 products, Rockchip are also at fault here for producing an SDK that was stuck in the past kernel-wise. The first time that I recall seeing mention of the specs of the Arcade 3588 was probably over in CNX software, where it was clear, at least from a hardware performance perspective, we were finally going to see the jump in ARM-based SBC TV box performance that had been lagging behind what we were seeing in recent low-cost phones. Improvements in the AM logic and Rockchip sectors, where there was clear dominance, had very much been drip feed. But despite all the positive thoughts, including from me, some correctly pointed out histories of poor support and development when it came to the SoC manufacturers themselves, with both AM Logic and Rockchip having been checkered histories in terms of promise versus actual delivery. So for those of you who understand computers, I'll try to explain this in a nutshell. Imagine buying a computer, your standard PC, or let's say a graphics card. You got all the hardware in the world, but what if those companies don't release the software for it, or update the drivers, or update the BIOS? They leave that up to you to do it. They sell you the hardware and tell you to go figure it out, and then hope other people make software and drivers for that hardware for you. That's pretty much the gist of kind of where we are right here, just to kind of give you guys a little simple comparison of where this conversation has been going. So it was essentially always up to the communities. Emphasis on communities. You guys know I've been using that word a lot lately because here we go. To the communities to further develop and drive forward the software side of things to get as close to what the hardware was actually capable of as possible. So if you guys are familiar even with the Orange Pi 5, we recently released some retropie stuff for it. And again, that's all community support. This board doesn't go anywhere without community development, without R&B and chipping in and other people like this tinkering away, getting it to be what it should be. And this is one of the problems that you have with single board computers and companies selling this kind of stuff is they sell you this stuff, whether you have an arcade one-up or whatever. But a lot of the stuff that they still pull from as far as GitHubs and whatnot is community-based work. But yet they sell it to you at a premium. Oh, and the Android front, this turned out to be quite successful much of the time. Linux-based distros, however, were not quite as easy to drive forward. I can definitely attest to that. This kind of issue has been quite consistent across a massive range of boards and SOCs for many a year now. So those with some experience should have their spidey senses tingling to some extent when a new product comes along, because history has shown that development can easily become a year before seeing anything really groundbreaking. You guys remember I made that arcade one-up video about Marvel vs. Capcom 2, single board computer optimization, new emulator technically being used. How do you think I knew all this? Because I'm familiar with working with single board computers and the development process that it typically entails to get something where it needs to be. With regards to the RK3588, however, there was actually reason for more optimism because of what was shown was capable right out of the box. And again, I have a problem. Some of the other devs have problems. I've told you guys, if you guys have watched some of my personal Facebook group posts and whatnot, that there are a lot of misleading single board computers because reviewers get these boards and they show you all the games that can run from a particular interface, or they'll show you everything running simply from desktop. And that's not how it's going to work with either in a Linux environment or a true gaming platform environment. The true development to find out what this single board computer can do with the particular chip, it takes months, and in some cases maybe a couple of years, or a year or two, or a year and a half. My first recollection of an actual real-world demonstration was probably one of the early Firefly boards demoed by Taki Udon, and the sheer grunt of the SoC was enough to push some processes to a point that gave rise for excitement, already moving past what was already on the market from the usual suspects. And you cannot, of course, beat real-world demonstrations. This is what this channel is about. We demonstrate stuff. A lot of channels don't do this, but they'll talk about the hardware and tell you how great something is and have no experience with the development whatsoever. There then followed more demos, albeit having to push them to do so at times, from the likes of Mechatronics and some of their seeming affiliates, each of which demonstrated more real-world benefits. Then we saw what had proposed with the Radaxa Rock 5 was going to be, with this impressive spec for what it seemed to like a keen price with your $5 token, albeit stinging people later on the delivery charge. Orange Pi themselves put on a good PR show telling us how great their all-new Orange Pi OS Android base with the ease of use of Windows and similar, which has turned into an epic farce and failure, and with other out-of-the-box distros out of the form of Android and Linux, both Ubuntu and Debian based. And with introduction of the RK3588S version, and just so I back up, for those of you who have an arcade one-up, you guys have the 3399 chip. I think that's also in the II arcade as well. You guys can double check that, but this all falls inside the line with the same thing. And with the introduction of the RK3588S, which is being used by the Orange Pi 5 Plus, version. We then saw that there was an amazing early bird price for the Orange Pi 5, which was way cheaper than the scalper prices for the hardware inferior Raspberry Pi. I guess he means Raspberry Pi 4, which of course was almost a non-existent to many consumers, which Ibn Upton, betraying his company's charity status in the UK, do give all priority to business customers. So there was a possible alternative with great potential, and as it happened, was popular from the off, with community development getting off to a fast pace. Even Orange Pi made updated release to their OS offerings, which have mostly dried up since April, which is correct. If you guys don't remember, I made a very scathing post about them releasing so many single board computers so quickly and so soon without finding out if there's any development. And then of course there could be the possibility of certain chips not working on a single board computer, which has happened because some of you have stated that the Orange Pi 5 Plus doesn't work with our work. And those were one of my major concerns, is what he's kind of talking about with them releasing stuff. And then of course these companies don't provide additional support. All look positive with just one key thing holding the 3588 back, the old kernel, restricting what could be done. Nonetheless, amazing progress was made in short spaces of time until recently, where the limitations of the kernel seem to have been reached. But we have some adoption into mainland from Linux, and what from what I've read recently, 3588 development is now being combined into the 3566 68 stream, which should be big emphasis on the should bring more progress. Listening to this piece, there was a reference made to the comparisons with the Raspberry Pi 4 development, which I have some disagreement with. When I first saw the release of the Raspberry Pi 4, I, like many others, had credit cards at the ready. But it became clear very soon that the much vaunted twin 4K capable HDMI ports were not even close to being able to do what the hardware specs promised. I definitely remember that when I got my Pi 4, we ran into some issues with that, plus the thing was overheating. To make things worse, even in company remained tight-lipped about this, we all had the issue with the first batch Empower issues, which also indicated that this was rush release with no real solid foundation of company support. Now, again, if you guys notice, there's been a lot of people making videos saying, hey, there's a Raspberry Pi alternative or replacement. And to some extent, that could be true, you know, in some aspects, but nothing replaces the Pi Foundation or the Raspberry Pi community and support. There's nothing that compares to it. Without the support of a single board computer, it's pretty much dead in the water. But the marketing and Pi history guaranteed that it would be lapped up. I held off on purchasing to follow development when it got to a point where I considered it a worthwhile investment. There was mass development from the established base. It took a whole year of daily sifting through new distro development before I saw something that really got some blood flowing, but even this had the same HDMI limitations present from day one. It took years to see anything close to reasonably fluent video playback, and even 1080p took a long time to become consistent, which is very true. In fact, I did one of the first videos here in the 64-bit environment with 1080p running with YouTube. You guys can check all that stuff out. So just to give you guys a little history. So any concept of the Pi 4 being this wonder board is demonstrably false from more than one angle. There were, of course, some uses that benefit from the new hardware, but this was not a magic bullet, and it took a long time in order to become even close to a daily driver. In fact, it could potentially be argued that with the already established communities for the Pi, the development should have been faster to get to maturity. So perhaps a case for more indictment of Pi 4 development. I don't mean in terms of many great devs, but what they were limited in being able to do. So in terms of comparison, the Orange Pi 5, which arrived the second half of December 2022, is still earlier in the development process to throw too many stones. That said, there are indeed some stones that could be legitimately thrown, and this could apply to more than one RK3588 vendor. But as an Orange Pi 5 purchaser, I shall use them as my enemy of choice. Mention has been made to having a single developer, and this shows with the glacially slow OS development process, which in reality has seen token updates masked as a continual development. Their support is pretty much non-existent. They created a great looking dedicated forum for their products, then left it alone. It is so full of spam with zero moderation. He's talking about their Facebook group. I'm a part of it. There's so much spam in that group. I offered to become a moderator and clean up things, but my offer fell on deaf ears. There is zero response to the user threads in the issue. They have one point of contact via email address of what is clearly an external contractor who never ever responds to communication. Ergo, Orange Pie as a company are just box shifters who reply on community support, or I think he maybe means rely on community support to drive things. Okay, I think he means rely on community support to drive things. Not unlike the Raspberry Pi Foundation, if truth be told, but this was not apparent early on. Some Arcade3588 vendors come to the plate, more providing some form of support along with the communities, but all seem somewhat hamstrung by the outdated kernel right now. Rockchip support is highly unlikely based upon past history, so we wait to see what happens with mainline Linux and other vendors who may well have more consultants and contractors working on moving things forward. The attraction to the Arcade3588 has been high, though, so with the communities that we do have, there is no reason to give up yet. We have, of course, already seen similar, less successful stories with all manner of other socks and boards, so the general warnings regarding purchase are very valid. And again, he's making reference to my last video in regards to, listen, if you're an end user, you guys need to wait for development and see exactly where the development goes and reach out to development teams prior to purchasing anything. Because without development, if you're the end user, then you're going to be screwed over waiting months, maybe years, having a paperweight and not knowing what you could even use it for simply because you bought it because somebody is touting the hardware is the best and how great it is. There was one other aspect that I was not in complete agreement with, that of reviewers and the like promoting these new products. If somebody is showing you for your own eyes to see what a product is capable of at any one point in time, then you should know for sure that this is the case. So the word misleading might be somewhat unfair to some that can only demonstrate what is available. There are plenty showing 60-second reviews that they are easy to spot, as are those that are that also review products that they do not even possess. And this is true in regards to this response. If you guys watched the last video, what I was more or less referring to are, again, let's say you watch a video, somebody showing you how something can run from a gaming emulator, running it from desktop, and that's not how it's going to run on Batacera. That's not how it's going to run in a Linux environment because it lacks Vulkan support for the most part. And so if you're planning on using RetroPie or let's say Batacera, which is Linux based, and it doesn't have Vulkan support, you're not going to get that same experience they showed you in the video. And in fact, in most cases, I could probably show you guys in maybe another upcoming video, when we booted or ported over RetroPie to the Orange Pi, there were so many emulators that could not compile, meaning they couldn't install on the single board computer. So imagine if you went out, even if RetroPie you had it working, you couldn't compile more than half of the emulators to run any of these games because they didn't work in that particular environment. They do now, but again, how do you show gameplay working from one environment to the X when you're not using it for gaming? So that's pretty much the point that I was making there, but that's his comment. Perhaps there is scope for more high-profile people to remind people of how development can be slow and even cease quite quickly, requiring patience and testing to help drive things forward in order to temper some potential expectation, but the user does have to take prime responsibility for doing the research before parting with your money. And again, you know, this is fine if you're a dev because you already know what you're getting into, but most of you who are end users and, you know, using this for gaming and maybe other programs, you're probably not going to know any of this. You're not going to know. So it's very hard for you to do your own research if you're relying on other people in the community to kind of make things happen and get things going. You're not going to know. It is not unusual to get frustrated, even if you have seen the history of slow progress and failure along the line, but we do have choice. In the meantime, we could try to hammer the box shifters to do better, where reasonable criticisms might slow sales and then hit them where it always hurts in the profit margins. Back last December, I had a vision of the third quarter of 2023 to see the greatest leaps, and we are coming upon that season very soon. In hindsight, if I had seen Intel finally doing something half right with the N100 for the uses I have, I would have saved my money and spent a little extra to get the same overall spec with storage and other general accessories in a mini PC, but alas, my DeLorean has lost too much of the horses required to get to 88 miles per hour, and plutonium is still not on the supermarket shelves. Mind you, with climate change, lighting might yet come to the rescue. Bottom line in general, though, is that the general warnings cited in this video have great merit, especially if you are new to the single board computer scene. I could write a book, but I have waffled on way longer than intended, so it shall disappear into the night. So yeah, definitely thanked him for his comment. And so yeah, again, you have people who are familiar with this issue, and again, wanted to spotlight that the importance for this video and this particular comment is that you can't look at a single board computer, say, ooh, look at this great hardware. Day one, the second you get it, and people may not even use it. The company may just abandon it and not even give you drivers for the darn thing, and yet they tout it as a Raspberry Pi replacement or alternative. If you're a developer working on a project and you're saying, yeah, this is where we are 4 months in, 6 months in, a year, yeah, you could do that. Like even right now, the only reason why I can tell you guys how I feel about the Orange Pi 5 as far as development is because we've done development on the Orange Pi 5, and I can show you exactly where we are. But if I didn't go to the store or order these things on Amazon, where exactly would they be? In fact, we have recently reached out to the Armbian team. They saw one of our comments about as far as some audio issues. I can't remember what it was. I think it was audio or video issues. And they said, okay, well, we'll add that to our list. We'll implement that into our their development. But what if we quit? What if we didn't get that far? They wouldn't have known to implement certain additional findings that we've run into through the process of development. You can't watch a YouTuber's video, content creator's video, touting hardware with no development. And you don't know if a particular entity, whether it could be, let's say, Kodi, retropie obviously doesn't support it. That's something we put out there. Other companies, I'm not familiar with all the Raspberry Pi software or apps that are out there, but if they've chosen not to support the RK3588 or any type of single board computer, you're going to be dead in the water. You can't talk about how great a single board computer is without knowing the development teams are going to be there. Because again, most people automatically assume, in fact, talking to a lot of you, automatically assume that the Banana Pi, the Orange Pi, and a couple of the other single board computers were all made by the Raspberry Pi Foundation. Some of you also may believe that, hey, some of this stuff is just plug and play. Like, hey, RetroPie, it just works. You just plug it in and it works. Like, we just finally started getting video loading screens work. If you wanted to have a comparison, a one-to-one scenario of, let's say, RetroPie between the Pi 4 and the Orange Pi 5, it's barely being held together. Like, we've pushed it right now as far as what we could do with it. A lot of the hardware is there, but there's been a lot of victory laps. There's been a lot of pain and anguish just to get things to where they need to be. In fact, we had even talked with the original guy who made, was it Retro Orange or Retro Orange Pi? He made Retro Pi on the previous version of Orange Pi. He didn't even want to touch it. And there's a number of other devs that don't want to even get involved with this particular chip or even the Orange Pi in general. And so, again, the strength of the community is what pushes a single board computer. Is not looking at hardware. Is not getting something right out of the box, taking it right to desktop, running a bunch of emulators and promising what type of development you're going to get. Because I could show you time and time again that as far as right now, you're not going to get that type of performance in a Linux-based environment where everything is running static free, as opposed to maybe running Android or whatever the case might be. And if these companies don't release driver support or completely support their product, it could just end up being a paperweight, or even we could be stuck in a particular development spot trying to get something to the next stage, and it's just not going to happen because there's a lack of support. But again, I hope this opens your eyes, giving you guys a better understanding as to how some of these single board computers work. I know this was quite lengthy and long, just to read this, but be very mindful when people want you to pre-order single board computers, telling you exactly how it's going to run, exactly what it's going to do, and they don't have it. They haven't done any development, and the only thing they want to show you is something running from desktop. And you're basing your decision making capability off of that, and it may not even happen. It might not even occur, and then in the meantime you've wasted your money on something, as like this guy could have in certain generals, with no support whatsoever. And even right now, if you guys are familiar with Steam Link, it doesn't really work so much on the Orange Pi 5, but what if that was something you wanted to work because you saw the Raspberry Pi 4, for example, worked flawlessly. I mean, it took about a month to port over retropie from the Pi 3B Plus to Pi 4, and everything was there. Video loading screens, a bunch of other stuff. The emulators, most of the emulators compiled. And again, just up until a few months ago, a lot of the emulators still won't compile on the Orange Pi 5. And that's very important so you guys to know that, because this isn't a PC where you just plug something in and it automatically works. I know a lot of you have that type of perception, but you have to make it work. You also have to make sure driver compatibility is there. And if you're thinking that something like this is automatically going to work, again, imagine buying a PC, but yet you got to find all the drivers or get the drivers and make it yourself for video cards. And again, we don't even have a lot of Vulkan support or video support for a lot of these single board computers, and that's always been a common thing. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this informative and how it relates to your home arcade purchases and gaming in general. Then of course we know that this also works or applies to other application based systems that are out there, because again, some applications won't boot. They won't work until further development takes place. And just be mindful of when companies, entities, people are telling you to pre-order, just buy something, or that it's going to be the next greatest thing, and they're not the ones offering any form of development. They're just showcasing what something may or may not do, and they're not releasing anything themselves. And again, like I said, I had one of these companies reach out to me. They wanted me to showcase it, and I'm like, well, what do you want me to showcase? I mean, what type of development do you want on it? And they're like, oh, just show the operating system. And I'm like, that's just not really how it works. So that really opened my eyes as to what kind of goes on in these single board computer reviews, and what goes on behind closed doors is that these companies just want to sell you their hardware. They're not focused on any development. They're not focused on providing software or driver support. They just want to sell you a bunch of boards and then make the community kind of work for free. Like right now, no telling how many Orange Pi 5s I've sold. I don't get a dividend for that, because of what we've done, and that's what the community does. But hey, it is what it is. But thank you guys for watching. You guys all have a great night. I will catch you.